Hello and welcome to this next presentation here at ABG Investor Days. My name is Simon Granat and I work as an equity analyst at ABG covering tech and IT companies. And with us today we have the pleasure of welcoming the CEO of Ovzon, Per Norén, who will take us through the company, give us an update, and then we will follow up with a shorter Q&A session. So with that said, Per, please go ahead and present.
Thank you, Simon. Really enjoy, look forward being here and talking about something that is quite revolutionary, which is the company that I'm the CEO for, Ovzon. Ovzon, if we go to the next slide, please. Ovzon was founded in Sweden in 2006. It's listed on Nasdaq Stockholm. Our main business, which I'll go into, is both in the United States and in Sweden, and we're growing globally. We have a very unique offering. I don't know if those of you that are here today actually understand what we do and how we do it, but I believe we have a very unique niche product and services for global connectivity in areas of the world which actually needs guaranteed connectivity and where normal infrastructure might not be available, or at least it's not reliable enough, or you need a total fallback solution on global connectivity with high throughput and extreme mobility in maybe areas where that is very difficult to accomplish. And that's what we do today through satellites. We call that SATCOM-as-a-Service. And I'll go into a little bit more about the pieces there. We are a service provider, so today we utilize other operators' bandwidth. We provide mobility terminals, and we connect that into a full solution, which we support and service globally around the clock. We have very unique intellectual property, patent, and technology. I always say that there is not a technology problem within connectivity and satellite communications and mobility that we cannot solve. So a very solid base there. We are in a sizable market. It's sometimes very difficult to look at how big the markets are because there's a number of ways to slice and dice that. But conservatively looking, our addressable market is around $7 billion, if not more, at least in what we offer today. We have set the company up for a step change in profitable growth. And I'll go into that in a minute. Our primary customers are actually United States Department of Defense and some specific groups within there. We have expanded that during the last year quite a lot. We're also working with government entities in other areas, in other countries of the world, and also with emergency services around the world, such as fire brigades, police forces, or United Nations, or actually governments for voting, etc., etc. So pretty large markets in front of us that we can growing, and I think we're industry-leading leadership at the company and very highly competent, skilled staff. So if we go to the next slide, let me try to explain a little bit further. So I try to do it verbally, but on the left-hand side, you can see that we actually are the only provider in this industry that provides unique end-to-end services. We understand the end users to the left. We can put our services on. We can apply it on aircraft, unmanned vehicles, maritime vessels, or land-going vessels. We have satellite capacity, and we have a connection to any teleporter gateway that you need. All of that is what we offer: high bandwidth, high mobility, a true mobile solution for areas in the world where you might not have the infrastructure needed to access. We've talked about the customers. We've talked about the capacity and reach. We have grown the company. You could see we had sales in about $19 million US in 2020. We have guided on that. We see that we are going to grow a little bit further than that this year. But I think the years to come are even more interesting from that perspective as well. And we have an addressable market of about $7 billion. Next slide, please. I won't go into all of this, because as I've said, the base of our business today and the customers we serve are predominantly United States Department of Defense. And we've grown that base quite considerably this year with new orders and expanded with new customer groups within the United States Department of Defense. We also work through distributors and partners in other parts of the world. One specifically is within Italy. We work both through a partner with the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Interiors. The Italian Fire Brigade, for example, is under the Ministry of Interiors. As an example of what we do there, you can actually say that when you have avalanches, when you have floodings that was in France and Belgium, the Italian Fire Brigade is actually world leading in going to those places and organizing the rescue efforts there. And they use our connectivity solutions to control what they do, how they do it, where they have their assets, where others are, and where specific equipment and competences are needed. So they do that better than anyone else. As you can see, we have some big partners, Airbus being one, Go Media is our Italian partner, and others around the world. We also control satellite capacity ourselves with steerable beams. That's essential. So we work very closely, for example, with Intelsat in this case, where we bought capacity from them from two major satellites, the Intelsat 37 and 39, which we now can use as part of our solutions for our customers. We're very strong on the terminal side. Terminals are actually, you could think of them as mobile devices. Now, what we're used to here, you can't see it maybe on the screen with an iPhone, is a very, very small form factor for us as consumers, right? But the smallest form factor in the industry actually comes from us in terms of that we can provide mobility within areas with no infrastructure, as I said, with terminals. There are the lightest way, smallest form factor, and with very high performance, basically an at-home experience with data, sending data and receiving data anywhere in the world, which is unique. We talked about that we've applied it to aircrafts and helicopters as well. We've had recently very successful applications and tests on that. We'll come back a little bit to the launch of Ovzon 3, which is our satellite. And that's probably where the promising part for this company is for the future, where we also will start to control satellite assets and bandwidth. We call our satellite Ovzon 3. It was supposed to be launched basically in the beginning of next year. It's slightly delayed because of issues in the supply chain with some of the components. That also affects about 90 other satellite programs, which are not ours, so we're not alone. That doesn't mean we're happy with being delayed, but we also have new launch dates in 2022, and we will be up and running in orbit with that satellite at the latest at the end of 2022, which means it can be in service then. We have a strong order backlog. We're working on finishing the year strongly here. So I think when it comes to our position and who we are, we're going to go from a fairly small niche provider to being a much larger, broader, and distinct solution provider to the markets we serve. So we can see a step change in profitable growth going forward. We can go to the next slide, please. As I said, we of course made sure we had funding for the first satellite, which is called Ovzon 3, as I said. It's a small geostationary satellite with a very unique feature on it, an onboard processor that no one else have. You can think of the onboard processor almost as a switchboard in space, where if you're teleported, so the way the satellite industry obviously works is you get the signal up to the satellite, it goes down again, and it connects to a teleport, and you're connected to internet. That's basically how it works. We have, if the gateway is no longer there, meaning you cannot connect to internet, we actually have an onboard processor where you can connect a terminal through that onboard processor to another terminal and make that terminal a gateway in itself. So you can have a highly secure, highly connected, highly performant network without having the normal infrastructure in place. There's no one else that has that. It's proprietary intellectual property and technology we have developed. It is integrated onto our Ovzon 3 satellite, and it will be revolutionary when it comes out. We also have plans for other satellites, but you have to be conservatively optimistic in this industry. So we want to launch our satellite first now, make sure that the unique value proposition we have is there, actually sell that out so that everyone that needs to can use that. And then we're going to look for launching more satellites in the future. Next slide, please. There are 4 things to materialize our vision. I think I've talked about unrivaled technology solutions and expertise. We have a very solid customer base currently, and we have also commercial agreements in place with distributors for other markets outside of the US DoD and the few other customers we have. We have a platform for growth. We have a very strong leadership team. We have a very strong technical base, and we have very strong partners that we work with. And we are not afraid to innovate. And we're maybe the most important aspect is we are extremely close to customers. We know what works, we know what they need, and we deliver that with our customer support and service 24/7. Next slide, please. I think we've already gone through this, which I talked about. One is terminals. Terminals are very important. Actually, we go to number 2, we designed our satellite based on our knowledge of how you actually get the highest throughput through the smallest terminals, and we do that from coming from a background in the terminal space. We have access to secure gateways, obviously, and of course, we have our own network operations center and customer support 24/7. And not many, if any, have all of these assets and aspects and can control the performance of all of those. Next, please. This is actually to talk about the whole value proposition. Why would it be different for a company and the solution provider for us? Why would we ever launch a satellite when there is bandwidth and capacity on other satellites? This picture is supposed to detect that. So on the left-hand side, on that axis, you can actually see the bandwidth and the throughput you can get through those satellites. Now, there's a readily available capacity, both in geostationary, mid-Earth stationary, so-called MEO, and low Earth orbit satellites, such as Starlink and OneWeb today. But if you're going to be a solution provider that can guarantee the highest throughput in areas where there's no infrastructure, or you actually need a guaranteed throughput with mobility, which is the next axis, we've designed a satellite that can get a higher energy from the satellite and from the beams to the terminals. And that is actually an extreme unique proposition. I would say that our competitors or co-opetition, that are Viasats and Inmarsats and others, are actually probably looking at us saying, this will be interesting because we are in a niche on our own. We both have the asset on the ground, the terminal, and the asset in the sky and space with this satellite. And I think that it's looked upon as more than promising, probably a threat to some of the more bread and butter or vanilla solutions that are out there today. Next slide, please. I think we talked about customers' applications before, so we're very strong within government and defense. We understand how to sell to, how to deliver to, and how to live up to the demands of government contracting. And if you do so, you are going to be rewarded with more contracts and renewed contracts in that space. We do work through partners. The bandwidth kind of contracts go through specific partners, and then we sell our terminals directly to the government, United States Department of Defense and the UK MOD, et cetera, et cetera. We've had recent expansions, both when it comes to fire brigades, as I said, both on the vessels that they have and on personnel. We also did some, and you can understand that business case, I hope. We've also done some implementations with Giro d'Italia, where the TV station actually used us to follow. You can think about this. You come up to high altops. There's no infrastructure to do broadcasting from. We could have a person on a motorcycle actually with our mobile terminal, and you can send and follow the cyclist, which then rendered a lot of interest from marketing and event planners around, and it drew a lot of branding and PR revenue to both RAI and to other parties in that. So it kind of explains the thing in a very good way. We also see opportunities, of course, in aviation, in the maritime business, and in telemedicine for the future. Next slide, please. We've talked about the satellites. It's basically, we're going to be launching this in Q2 this year. It's going to be in operation in Q4. It takes some time for it to be shot up and then put into orbit and then being used by us. It has 5 steerable beam, high power, high throughput beams, and the onboard processor is a unique feature. Next slide, please. So I think in summary, just to say something about this, a unique Swedish company, Swedish innovation that have mastered to get into one of the most difficult and most demanding customers to work with, the United States Department of Defense, starting to grow in other markets, geographical markets, as well as other markets, commercial markets and government markets. We have a setup where we also can produce, historically we have produced maybe up to 20 terminals a year. We're now at a stage where we have a new production partner. We can go to 200 a year, which is actually the demand we have right now on ourselves. So we're setting ourselves up for a step-changing profitable growth. The satellite market, of course, is growing. The conservative estimate, as I said, of our market is 7 billion. We have a strong order backlog. We're uniquely positioned with our niche offering that we call SATCOM-as-a-Service. And within 10 years after we've launched Ovzon 3, we expect to have a global network of our own satellites and assets that we can manage and thereby control our continued growth and expansion as a company. And with that, I think my 20 minutes is over, and I'm ready for some interesting questions, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Per. So many exciting stuff happening both in your business and in the satellite industry overall. Initially, I'd like to ask on the question where you come in as a relatively new CEO of Ovzon, but you come in with so much comprehensive experience from the industry. Could you talk a little bit on what you have done before and what you think that you provide to the table?
Absolutely. That's quite a good and interesting question. You prepare your kind of what questions are you going to get, but I did not see that coming, but I would be happy to. Now, first of all, I've been in the aerospace industry almost my entire life, aerospace, airline, and transportation industry almost my entire life with technology, both hardware and software. So basically, I ran a software company in Sweden that was acquired by Boeing. The software company provided logistics optimization solutions for the airlines, railway companies, and transportation industry, where the value proposition was that we made bottom line savings for our customers with up to 10% of the bottom line. So we drove profitability and et cetera, et cetera. That was acquired by Boeing. I then spent 10 years at the Boeing company in both what we today could maybe call IoT, but it was really around connectivity. It was about data and analytics. It was about artificial intelligence. And it was about what do you do with all the data that is produced from aircraft in both military and commercial, and how do you build up systems of system solutions? And the last mile that wasn't covered there was actually connectivity. So after 10 years, when I had also led Boeing's digital business and stood that up, I jumped I moved to another company called Global Eagle, today called Anuvo. Anuvo provides connectivity solutions to airlines, maritime, and land sites. We operated other people's network, basically, or we bought capacity from other satellite providers. We had technology. We put antennas and modems and wireless access points on aircraft, on cruise ships, on yachts, and on land sites. We work with the United Nations, etc. So I have dealt with the hardware, the software, and the connectivity, and how you get all of that together in one solution and create a portfolio of capabilities in that. And then from there, I actually came to Ovzon. I am both a Swedish and a US citizen, so I actually live in the United States. So I'm clear to actually work with the main customer here, the United States Department of Defense. I've lived about 14 years in the US. So it's almost like it became full circle for me to come back and work with and for and lead a Swedish company in this space. I think what I bring to the table, frankly, Simon, is no problem is too hard to solve. You have to be very focused on who you serve, your customer. You have to prioritize your technology investments. You have to deliver on your promises, and you have to drive business results in parallel. So going from a small startup business to scaling this company to an industrial leader is kind of what I think I bring to the table and what I'm excited about and waking up to with a passion to drive every day.
Thank you so much for that. And when we are touching the subject of your customers, as you pointed out during the presentation, it's the main customer you have today are governments, but you're also broadening into other areas as well. How important is this broadening going forward for your strategy? How would you like to move the company going forward, focusing on different customers, etc.?
I think it's quite important. Small companies or smaller companies have a tendency to get stuck, if I'm going to use that word, with the major, the one customer that you've served for a long time, right? So I think it's very important to expand, not to be vulnerable with just one customer. So it's important both to take care of that. It's almost like an avocado, right? At the core, in the middle, is the kernel. That's our core base of customers that we have today. We know them well, we serve them well, and we innovate with them, etc., etc. But you have to expand into the meaty side of the avocado and actually build up other similar products and services, but to other markets. So I think we have to go from a one-legged and two-legged stool to a three, four, five-legged kind of business. And if you do that in a smart way, and it's not easy, by the way, because you have to understand the domain you get into. All customer and market segments are different. They think differently. So you have to have people that understand that and are trustworthy in that segment in order to address it and attack it and grow within it. But I think for Ovzon, it's extraordinarily important to stay close to our core, but expand into other markets selectively. And that's what's going to drive profitable growth, because you can also lose lose your profitability by trying to expand into markets where you have no experience. So we're very selective. We want to scale with the same products and services. So we're looking for those areas where what we do matters most and where we can use the same technology.
Thank you. And I think we have time for a short final question. In recent time, you booked a relatively large, or actually a large hardware order. Could you talk a little bit about the dynamics of that order? Or is this a new focus for the company to actually capture these hardware orders and not just services orders? Or is it a combination that we would like to see here?
Yes. It is a combination of it. But I think that I was trying to say that in the presentation, having both the hardware, meaning the terminals, and the capacity of the bandwidth, so you can provide a full solution, an end-to-end solution. That's where we're going. That's where the customers want us to go. But think about it this way: you can have a wonderful network with a lot of capacity that you can sell. But if you have terminals out in the world, the hardware orders are actually terminals that then starts to get used. That becomes reference points. It creates barriers of entry. It drives more need for the business and services. So we want to actually flood the market with terminals. The key order here we got was from our core customer that have used a number of terminals before. They're more than tripling actually the number of terminals they have, which will drive more demand towards us, and it will be more of a reference point for us as well. So we think that it is a very important aspect of our business to have more terminals out there in the world, and then that will drive further demand of our service offerings and different service plans we have. So yes, it is a strategy.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was super exciting to have you here, Per. And with that said, I wish you a continued great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thanks to ABG for these great investor days. I'm following them myself. Quite some interesting presentations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.